All right, welcome to today's show. So I'm going to give you 10 bullish reasons for MicroStrategy and Bitcoin in 2025. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that I know it's been choppy for the last couple months. I know there's many people that have purchased MicroStrategy or Bitcoin, and they're waiting for the big boost and the big run. And so I want to give you 10 bullish reasons. This is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. This is not tax advice. This is not any investment advice whatsoever. But I want to get into the 10 reasons why I'm bullish and back it up with some data. Okay. So number one, and also if my background's washed out a little bit, it's because I needed to let the sunlight in and get the fresh air in here. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles. So number one, breaking news, central banks, the Czech central banks, have announced a plan to potentially put in 5% of their reserves into Bitcoin, which would equate to about $7 billion in Bitcoin purchases, somewhere around 71 million Bitcoin. So that's super, super exciting. And why that's exciting with the Czech central banks announcing this is we are now seeing a face-off with countries around the world. And as Senator Lummis said months back, rather than having an arms race, we could have a race for Bitcoin and strategic Bitcoin reserves. And we're seeing this happen where the Czech central banks are announcing it. We have the U.S. government that's talking about it. And it's exciting to see big players getting in the game. And it's a competition where people are chasing after a supply that is dwindling right now. And there's high demand for it, which is a good indicator for Bitcoin in 2025, which also means it's a good indicator for us as well in terms of MicroStrategy as well. Okay, so that's the first thing. So that's cool, and it's great news. The second thing is, the number of states that are pouring in to pass legislation for strategic Bitcoin reserves for the states. You've got Pennsylvania, you got Texas, you got Arizona, which I think is one of the closest of all of them. You got Ohio, you got New Hampshire, you got North Dakota, Wyoming, Massachusetts, Oklahoma. We have all different kinds of states that are literally going through the process to pass legislation. I did a little research on this, and if I'm incorrect, fact check me on it. But the one thing that I looked at is that, they don't need the approval of the U.S. government to do this. They are going to pass it within the Senate and within the House, within their bodies of government within the states, and then it goes to the governor to sign off on it. So we are seeing this happen within states. I think we're at 15 or 16 U.S. states right now, and that is a super, super bullish sign, like really bullish. So you take into account Czech central banks, you take into account the U.S. States that are getting involved in this as well, and then you look at what's going on with the U.S. strategic digital stockpile, that somehow, somewhere, we're going to get an answer in the next 180 days of this. But I just don't see how Congress is going to come back with any other ruling that there will be a strategic digital currency reserve. I don't see any other prudent way to say that at least 95% of it is Bitcoin. I think 100% of it should be Bitcoin. And so this is very, very, very bullish for Bitcoin. This is very, very bullish for MicroStrategy. And this is really good news. Also, if you look at just the dwindling reserve that's happening with the over-the-counter markets, that's where the big buyers go to buy Bitcoin, right? So if you look at it over the last 6 or 7 months, that is dwindling as well. So the supply was very high back in 2024, and it's been dwindling and down by almost 75% in terms of the over-the-counter exchanges with their Bitcoin supply. So that is an indicator that we have a supply crunch coming in. That is an indicator that there's only so much Bitcoin to go around, and that is a really good bullish sign for Bitcoin in 2025. So that's super, super good news, okay? Which is great, right? So that's bullish news as well. So we have lots of bullish news that's going on as well. We also have bullish news on, the preferred stock for MicroStrategy. And, I'm pretty simple when it comes to stuff like this. You can read the guidelines, you can go through the presentation, but basically the reason preferred stock is good news for us as common shareholders is because it's a way where Saylor doesn't have to tap the ATM with the common stockholders like us. And so now they're going to the preferred stockholders. Apparently, this offer gives them about an 8% dividend. And so they can hold on to this offering and get an 8% dividend every year and keep getting the dividend. At some point, they can then convert it into common share stock, but they don't have to. And so this is a good way and another good way for MicroStrategy to start raising money and raising additional money where they're not tapping the ATM all the time. And I believe the way that it would tap the ATM is somebody's got to pay the 8% out to the preferred stockholders. And I think that would come from tapping the ATM from the common stock shareholders like us. But hey, overall, it's not tapping the ATM of like taking all of our, diluting our shares as common stockholders, which we know in the short term has been causing the price to chop to some degree. And so now it's exciting that there's another way for MicroStrategy to raise money. And needless to say that because MicroStrategy has issued so much common stock over the last several months, this year is going to be a big year for also convertible bonds and convertible notes for MicroStrategy, which as part of their 21-21 plan, $21 billion of common stock, $21 billion of convertible notes, they have to start tapping the convertible bonds soon this year, and they're going to start doing it. And as they do that, that's a bullish sign for MicroStrategy as well. So this is very good as well. So it's exciting. And Ferthy's asking in the here is like MicroStrategy stock closely today, while with Bitcoin up by 2%, MicroStrategy should have risen about 6%. That's usually how it works, but every time the stock price goes over, yeah. So like MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, they don't move in tandem together. They move in a different pace, I should say. So it's not like all of a sudden Bitcoin goes up and MicroStrategy automatically goes up. Whatever the reasons are for that, we can speculate and say when he's tapping the ATM sailor, it does what it does to the stock. But MicroStrategy doesn't always move in tandem with Bitcoin. Okay, so in the long run, as Bitcoin goes up, MicroStrategy is going to go up. But in terms of a day-to-day movement of it, I haven't seen that to be correlate exactly as you're seeing today. So hope that answers that question. So these are good reasons, right? These are really good reasons for us to be bullish about 2025. If you're just joining us, I was just going over multiple reasons to be bullish. The first reason I was talking about is the Czech central banks have now announced that they're looking at 5% of their reserves to go into Bitcoin, which equates to about 7 billion Bitcoin, $7 billion worth of Bitcoin, or 71,000 Bitcoin. So that's a really exciting thing. Number two, I think we're up to 15 or 16 U.S. states now that are going through the legislative process to get passed in terms of being able to actually create a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the states. So that's super exciting as well. We also have the U.S. government, as we know, creating the digital stockpile, and we have 180 days to see what Congress is going to come back with and to see what they propose on this. I do not see any way where this does not get approved, particularly with announcements like the central banks in the Czech central banks. Seeing these announcements, and you start to see this race in the competition. You start to see the pressure from the states in the U.S. of 15 states pouring in. And you just start to see this competition around the world that's bubbling to where there is a supply crunch right now for Bitcoin. We know that 5 million Bitcoin have been lost, right? Overall, out of the 21 million supply, people just lost their wallets. They're gone forever. We know that about 19 million is already issued. There's only about 2 million left. We know that there's such a competition between the ETFs, which I think in the last 7 months, the ETFs have bought something like 320,000 Bitcoin. We take a look at what Sailors bought in the last 6 or 7 months, around 250,000 Bitcoin. And we start to look at the OTCs and we look at their desks and the supply shortage that's going on. There's been about a 75% drop in the supply in the over-the-counter exchanges over the last 6-7 months. So this is a big supply shock coming in. And there's a big competition of states pouring in and nations pouring in. So there is a big demand for this, a bigger demand than we've ever seen. And when we look back at the previous bull markets that took place 4 years ago and 4 years before that and 4 years before that and 4 years before that, we never had this kind of institutional adoption. Not to mention over 150 U.S. companies, I should say, that have adopted the Bitcoin standard and are putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I mean, we couldn't be more bullish for what's going on. And yes, it is frustrating. I do understand to see that it's chopping sideways and you wake up in the morning, you're like, come on, when is this thing going to run past 109,000 and Bitcoin's going to hit a high? Come on, MicroStrategy's been trading sideways for the last 2 months. But let me remind you, okay, when I got in MicroStrategy in early 2024, I bought in early. I remember when it ran all the way up to 1900 and I was like, wow, man, I just tripled my money, right? And it then ran all the way down to 1100. And we saw a 45% drop. This was last year in 2024. And then I remember waking up day after day, week after week, month after month, and just watching it chop sideways for months and months and months. This happens. This happens during bull runs. We would all love to see it go straight up in vertical, and that would be the game, and like, boom, but that would actually be bad because the sell-off pressure would be so high at that point. It would heat up so fast, and people would just sell off. So the way we're moving, despite the fact whether people like it or not, I think is good. I think there's demand being built up. Nations are pouring in. States are looking to pass legislation. The U.S. is going to pass some legislation on this. They have to. There's no way the U.S. can deny that crypto is going to be part of the entire world. And we see that nations and other countries are following right now. So this is the future. It is here now. It is happening. And of course, we'd all like to look at it like we can go and buy Bitcoin right now or buy MicroStrategy right now. And there's bureaucracy involved when you're dealing with banks, when you're dealing with countries, when you're dealing with governments, when you're dealing with states. There's a bubbling process that takes place that is a little bit of a time lag here that like we're seeing that eventually will pop. And it will pop in a good way, okay? So this is good news. And also, just like we saw, MicroStrategy run up to 1900 before the stock split in 2024, and it dropped down to 1100, which was whatever, that's a 40% drop or so. And we saw it run up to 546 after hours in 2024. I'm correcting myself from yesterday because yesterday I said it was 530, but it's actually 546. It ran up to after hours in 2024. And then it's dropped down as low as 280. And now it's back up to whatever it's up today. All right. So MicroStrategy is going to run, not financial advice, not investment advice. It is going to run. Bitcoin's going to run. And I was watching a great thing from James at Invest Answers last night, and he did some research on different AIs and the predictions of different AIs. And he was saying that based on the predictions of different AIs, the prediction has come out about $180,000 Bitcoin price this year. So you average out the different AIs, whether it's DeepSeek, whether it's Grok, whatever the different AIs are, and you take out their predictions, and the average came out to about 178,000 Bitcoin to be exact. Also, if you look at the analysts, the different analysts around the world that are talking about what Bitcoin is going to run to in 2025, their average price points came out to about 180,000. I think that's real. I think 180,000 Bitcoin is real. I would love to see Bitcoin over 200,000. That would be amazing. And I'd be super happy and bullish with that, or excited with that bullish prediction coming true. But we'll see. Okay. We'll see. But we do know that we're sitting at 104,000. If we ran up another 80%, that would be super exciting. And that would be a great run in the next 6, 7, 8 months. So that's another reason to be bullish on Bitcoin. The other reason, which I didn't state as a reason, is just what I was sharing about the stock price. I saw this in 2024, in terms of early 2024. And then we saw the big run up again with the MicroStrategy. So we've had several major run ups that took place in 2024. It runs up and then it runs back down. In late 2024, it ran up and it's run back down. And so we're due for another run up. When that's going to come, I just don't know, but I know it's going to be sometime in 2025. Okay. The other reason to be bullish in just a fundamental principle of MicroStrategy, I was on a podcast earlier today, and one of my friends was asking me a question, and he said, hey, can you just break this down in a very, very simple way of why MicroStrategy is a smart choice? I'm not going to say a smart investment, just a smart choice for people to get educated on and to look at. And I said it's really simple. I'm going to break it down in a very simple level of why anybody who's studied Bitcoin and anybody who's actually studying MicroStrategy should look at it and go, this is just an intelligent move with what they're doing, and should be very, very bullish on this stock over the long term. So the simple concept was this, and this is what I explained to my friend on the podcast I was just on. I said, if you go to invest $1, right? You take $1 and you go invest it. And let's say you're going to take that dollar and you're going to put it into Bitcoin. And let's say Bitcoin doubles this year. That dollar just became $2. And that's your money that you're putting in. Now, when you look at what MicroStrategy is able to do, not only do they take their dollar, which is initially how they started in this game in 2020, where they emptied out their reserves of $250 million and they made their first Bitcoin purchase. And so if you look at initially, they put their dollar in, just like you and I put our dollar in. And like if you get a double, the dollar turns into $2. But if you just look at the basic principle of leverage, which anybody who does real estate understands this. If you want to go buy additional property, right, you take out a loan and you go buy some property. So you're using leverage. You're using other people's money to create greater leverage to increase your returns and increase your wealth. Simple concept that's been around for a long, long time. So if you look at a company like MicroStrategy, which has the ability to actually go out and create leverage, they, instead of using a dollar, can simply go out and go to a company and go, hey, or not go to an investor and say, hey, loan me $1. So now if they get loaned $1, instead of their $1 at work, they now have $2 at work. So in simple math, if I have $1 and it doubles, it's 2. But if I'm MicroStrategy and I have my own dollar, and then I borrow $1 and it doubles, I have $4. Where would you rather be? Would you rather be somebody who has $2 that turns into 4 or somebody who has $1 that turns into 2? I think the obvious answer is 2 turns into 4. So we're talking about intelligent leverage that's being utilized by a company that allows them to get more Bitcoin per share for you and me as the shareholders, which is a really, really good thing in terms of their overall strategy, okay? Third thing, not only do they go and borrow the dollar, and that's what their convertible notes are. They're borrowing $1. And the brilliant thing is they borrow at 0%. So when they borrow at 0% and they're able to take that second dollar and double it, they obviously increase their pile of Bitcoin, right? Because every dollar they borrow, they're going to buy more Bitcoin. So the third way is really simple. Third way is then they issue shares. And so if you're watching a company who was one of the first movers on Bitcoin and continues to grow their Bitcoin stockpile, right, or their Bitcoin reserve, and you watch them over the last 4 or 5 years doing this, and then number 2, you're watching people like large investors loan them money at 0%. And then number 3, you're watching people pour into the stock and are willing to pay a premium for the stock. And you're watching that excess money that we hand them when we buy their stock being put into Bitcoin. You're looking at 3 ways to increase their Bitcoin stockpile. So that's how they're creating leverage. And if you look at traditional instruments for creating leverage across the planet, it's been used for 100 years or more. Borrow money. Go buy something. Well, MicroStrategy borrows at 0%. They go buy Bitcoin. Issue shares. Companies have been issuing shares for as long as companies have been around in the stock market. Issue shares. Take the money. Do something with it. Whereas a normal company just sinks the money into operating expenses, maybe new projects, new inventions that won't pay dividends for years. MicroStrategy buys Bitcoin right now at a time where Bitcoin's booming, where we're in the bull run, and immediately starts to see the price going up, or at least over a month or 2 months or 3 months, the price is going up. You can't beat that strategy. And no company will ever beat it. They now own 2.4% of the Bitcoin supply. No company will ever beat it because they got in and they were first movers. Heck, they've almost bought more Bitcoin than the ETFs combined. The ETFs combined bought over 300,000 Bitcoin. MicroStrategy's bought 250,000 Bitcoin in the last 6 or 7 months. That's huge. So, if I'm looking at a stock right now, Michael Saylor always says with Bitcoin, there is no second best, with MicroStrategy, there is no second best right now. To me, for me, it's the best stock right now. And I don't think anything's going to beat it in 2025. Just my personal viewpoint, not financial advice, not tax advice, not legal advice. It just is my viewpoint. And that is why I'm extremely bullish on what they're doing. Because when it comes back to it, you can look at the news, you can look at the FUD, you can look at the media, you can look at all the different news that comes out every single day, and we're all trying to figure it out. But at the end of the day, you got to look, does it have fundamental sound principles? And do you believe in those fundamental sound principles? And if you believe in Bitcoin, first and foremost, and you understand Bitcoin, and then you understand what MicroStrategy is doing, then when you put those two things together, it is a sound strategy for the future, both with Bitcoin and both with MicroStrategy owning somewhere in the nature of 471,000 Bitcoin at this point. So yes, we can all get, our panties in a bunch in the short term. And of course, like if I bought MicroStrategy when it was at 500 and it dropped, I'd be like, yeah, oh my God, man, I feel like I'm just waiting for this thing to go up. I would be in angst as well. But also, like, I would also be looking to the future, and I would calm myself with the certainty of what's about to come and what is coming in the next 6, 7, 8 months of this bull run. And we are in the bull run. And so that's another reason to be extremely bullish about MicroStrategy and extremely bullish about Bitcoin. And the fact that they're coming out with new ways and new instruments. I mean, Michael Saylor is not stupid, right? And the fact that he's coming out with new ways and new instruments for people to invest in MicroStrategy. So at the end of the day, he can make sure that his strategy is working for his shareholders. And that is his responsibility. And of course, if he doesn't make sure that his strategy is working for his shareholders, it's not going to work for him, and it's not going to work for his company. It's not going to work for anybody who's his shareholders. So he's doing a very smart thing, and I think they have a brilliant strategy. I think they have a brilliant plan. I think the fact that we have so many companies that are adopting the Bitcoin standard as well and following the MicroStrategy playbook tells you that there's smart people out there, there's smart companies out there, there's smart countries out there, there's smart nations out there, there's smart, government officials out there that are lobbying for this, like Senator Lummis, and there's smart people out there. So these are just reasons why it's smart, it's logical, and we are in a place where this is just the logical choice. And I'm not saying that MicroStrategy is your logical choice. I'm saying as we look at the present time of where we are as a world and a country, and we look around the world, the smart choice now is Bitcoin, period. It's the smart choice. For me right now, there is not another choice. There's Bitcoin and there's MicroStrategy for me. And that's where I'm at right now in this present moment. Yeah, do I own some Tesla? Yes. Do I believe in what they're doing? Yes. Do I believe in the future of AI? Yes. Another technology not to turn your back on and not to say, oh, AI is just another, it's a bubble. No, AI is here to stay. Digital currency is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Innovation will continue. Cryptocurrency is innovation. And the technology is way more sound. And it is Bitcoin, the most sound money we've ever had, period. There's no argument with that. You can't even make an argument for that. Somebody who doesn't understand Bitcoin could sit here and make the argument. But what are you going to compare it to? What are you going to compare it to? The US dollar? It's doing the exact opposite of what the US dollar is doing. Again, I'll go back to my central point on this. If you print 7% more money every single year with the US dollar, and that's going up in terms of the money supplier, the people who hold the dollar, their value of the dollar is going down, period. It's just that simple. And with Bitcoin is the exact opposite. While the money supply is increasing in the US and the dollar is being printed and printed and printed, the Bitcoin supply is decreasing. While money is not scarce, Bitcoin is scarce. And it's just a fundamentally sound principle. And then when you look at, I don't know how someone can look, and of course it's not you because you're here and you believe in MicroStrategy, but I don't know how the world can look at MicroStrategy and not just understand and get what they're doing. Particularly with the fact that they are gobbling up and they are the one company in the planet, in the world, that owns the most Bitcoin, period. Nobody's even close to them. So it's just like all the reasons to be bullish go back to the sound principles of Bitcoin and the basic fact that MicroStrategy is gobbling it up. And yeah, they're tapping the ATM, sure, right? But they're coming up with new ideas and new ways, like this preferred stock they've come up with that is going to be better than tapping the ATM because they won't have to tap the ATM for the common stockholders like us, except to pay the dividends out for the preferred stockholders. Okay. So that's going to come from somewhere, right? So it's exciting. It's exciting. It's a good time. So I don't see a world where we don't take off and go to the moon with this thing. Does it change the fact that this is volatile? No, it doesn't change the fact. It's extremely volatile. And will it change MicroStrategy's volatility? Absolutely not. And the very reason why I invest in it is for moments like this. Because you have to, if you just want the upside of something, then go invest in a bond, right? But because you're not just going to get the upside of something that's extremely volatile. That's not how volatility works. So if you're going to get in something and you're going to look at, wow, it's extreme volatility, you have to be able to stomach the upside of the volatility and the downside of the volatility and know that it will move up and down like crazy, like it does, like it has, like it did in 2024, like it did many times in 2024. It hit highs, it went down, it hit highs, it went down. Okay. And it will continue to do that in 2025. And when it moons in 2025, we'll all get very, very, very excited. And for me personally, not financial advice to anybody else, I will take profits. Because as fast as it goes up is as fast as it could go down too. Okay. So you just have to be mindful of that and just really take a look at it. I love what BTC4 says here. Clean water is scarce. Bitcoin is finite. 100%. 100%. So it's exciting. So those are the reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin. I'm just going to recap the reasons to be bullish on Bitcoin for those of you just joining us. Number one, we take a look at the news for the Czech central banks, the announcement of the potential of up to 5% of their reserves going into Bitcoin. So that would be about $7 billion. That's number one. Number two, old news, but we know it, and it's a bullish sign. The U.S. is creating a strategic digital currency stockpile, or they have on the docket to create one. They haven't created one yet. They got 180 days to decide on this. I can't see that they're going to come back and say no. Yeah, I think it would be the most foolish move in the history of the U.S. to do this. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, we've seen explosive growth with MicroStrategy before. Back in 2024, ran up to 1,900, close to 2,000. And I remember watching it go down to 1,100 at that time. That was a 45% drop, like we just experienced when it went up to 540 and went down to 280. Okay, so that's the second thing. We see the stock move like this. It doesn't mean to be bearish on it. It's just how the stock moves. That's why we love the volatility of it, or at least I do. So that's number three reason. Number four, Bitcoin is finite, as my friend here on the BTC, I forget what you were saying over there. BTC, what is it? Let me just look here. BTC4 says it is finite. And so we have a finite supply of this. 19 million are already in circulation for Bitcoin. There's about 2 million left. And so this is a finite thing that's going to continue to go up over time. In my lifetime, we will most certainly see $1 million Bitcoin. I think we will see one in the next 20 years. So that's super exciting. Next, on MicroStrategy, why to be bullish. If you do the math on this, and again, giving credit to James from Invest Answers on this math, but we were looking at this like 60 days ago. And when you start looking at MicroStrategy, if you did a comparative analysis of buying MicroStrategy and say you put $100,000 into MicroStrategy, not financial advice, and you put 100 grand in, right? Buying 100 grand 2 months ago and looking at this, it would get you about 0.45 Bitcoin. All right. Whereas if I had put $100,000 into Bitcoin at the time, it would get me 1 Bitcoin. So you look and you go, wow, $100,000 into MicroStrategy, 0.45 Bitcoin. $100,000 into Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin, right? Now, if you look at these things side by side, the purpose of what Michael Saylor's doing, even when he taps the ATM, okay, even when he taps the ATM, especially when it does that, he's looking to increase the Bitcoin per share for shareholders like us, right? As he's been doing this over time, our Bitcoin per share has been going up. That's what we're interested in. And so if you were to project this example out over however many years. How long do you think it's going to take Bitcoin to get to $1 million? Okay. So you take a Bitcoin today that you own, let's say one Bitcoin at $100,000. You even put $100,000 into it. That Bitcoin of $100,000 investment goes up and it goes to $1 million per Bitcoin. You still only own one Bitcoin. Make sense? $100,000 in today, not today, when we were looking at this like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. $100,000 in at that time when Bitcoin was at 100 grand buys you one Bitcoin. You have one Bitcoin. 100,000 into MicroStrategy at the time bought you about 0.45 Bitcoin. So a person looks and goes, why would I buy MicroStrategy when I get more Bitcoin just buying a Bitcoin? You project this out, and this is numbers that were looked at the time. And you look at those numbers and you look at when Bitcoin goes to $1 million per Bitcoin, right? That's just a mock-up, an idea of what it could go to. I think we will see Bitcoin at $1 million. That one Bitcoin that you bought at 100K will still be one Bitcoin. With MicroStrategy, if you looked at different scenarios, the average scenario that we were looking at was you could potentially have 5 to 6 Bitcoin at that time frame when Bitcoin is at $1 million price point. So your MicroStrategy shares, your MicroStrategy that you bought $100,000 into it, where it was at 0.45 at that time, Bitcoin could go up to potentially 5 or 6 Bitcoin. So now you own more Bitcoin. And that is indicative, or that is an example of what Michael Saylor is doing to increase the Bitcoin per share for the shareholders. So holding MicroStrategy long term can give the opportunity to actually hold more Bitcoin per share by owning the stock over the long run. Okay. Does that mean that I'm going to sit there and watch it go all the way up and all the way down in 2025? No, I am going to take some profits, but that is just the overall outlook for MicroStrategy and why it is a super, super intelligent strategy that they are implementing. Okay. If you're just joining us, I did go over my bullish reason of using the simple example of a normal person could put $1 in and buy Bitcoin. MicroStrategy, it's almost like they can put $3 into every dollar that a normal person can. They can put their own money in, they can borrow money to put money in, and they can issue shares or issue stock and collect that money and put more money into Bitcoin. So they have 3 ways or 3 times the ratio of buying power that any one individual does, hence called leverage. So that's another reason to be bullish on MicroStrategy as well as the future of Bitcoin. And I forget what reason we're on, but this is all very exciting. Oh, yeah, we have 15 different states or 16 different states that are looking to get strategic Bitcoin reserves. Of course, it has to go through all the legislation. Each state will take different time frames for it to go through its legislative process. So it's not all going to come out at once per state when and if they pass it, but that's another reason to be bullish as well. So there's so many reasons to be bullish. And then finally, we have the dwindling supply. If you look at the OTC desks, the over-the-counter exchanges where the big players go to buy Bitcoin, where people go to buy, 50 million, 100 million or more, people are buying over the counter. When you look at the dwindling supply over the last 7 months, we've seen a dwindling supply of about 70%, where on those exchanges, there was a large amount of Bitcoin 6-7 months ago, and it's dwindled down to about 120,000 on those exchanges present day. So we're looking at, or around 100, I don't have the exact figure right now, around 100. So we're looking at a massive decrease in over-the-counter exchanges in terms of their supply. And then finally, we're looking at just the competition, and that's exciting. We know when there's demand out there and there's little supply, that can push the price up. So when we look at the competition that's going around the world between countries, between states, between companies that are gobbling it up, between ETFs, between retail investors, we look at a massive, massive competition where everybody's racing, or not everybody, a lot of people are racing to pour into Bitcoin. So these are bullish signs, and do I concur and feel you that it stinks, right? It stinks when it's chopping sideways. Yeah, but this is how it rolls, and if this is your first bull run that you're sitting through, this is how it rolls. And you're probably excited where you wake up in the middle of the night and sometimes you look at your Bitcoin price. I remember doing that in the last bull run. But be patient. Not financial advice, not legal advice, not tax advice. But it's exciting. Les Brown says, what happens when there's no more Bitcoin to buy? Well, the last Bitcoin will be issued in 2140. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be that long for there to be a supply crunch. It's already happening, right? And when you look at the issuance of Bitcoin on a daily basis in 2023, we were issuing, or the protocol was issuing 900 Bitcoin per day. When the halving comes in, it halves the supply, and the issuance went down to 450. So you have 450 Bitcoin being issued per day. If you go look at the purchase rate and the amount of consumption and the amount of people that are buying Bitcoin today, from institutions to states to countries to governments to companies that are pouring in to compete for this 450 that's issued every day, there's being more gobbled up than's being issued. And so something's got to happen. And do we think that somebody's suppressing the price and keeping it down right now? Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are such things as market makers. There's people with large amounts of money that can suppress the price on things like this. How they do it, I don't know. But with this much demand, I find it hard to see that it's staying in this range and not breaking out. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see a breakout. So is it unfortunate that the price can be suppressed? My theory is that it can be suppressed, yes. Is it unfortunate? Yeah, but you can only suppress it for so long because all the other indicators are leading to a big boom. All right, so that's the basic story. And, one day when all the Bitcoin is bought up, imagine this. It's like there's no more Bitcoin. Only if you're willing to sell it to me can I buy it. And then you could imagine the markup on price then, right? I want to own Bitcoin. The price is at $1 million one day. It's like there's hardly any Bitcoin left. You could imagine what will happen at that point. And that's the very thing that will actually drive the price up, in my opinion, is that there are people realizing that this is a reality and people are getting the message that there's only 21 million, there's only 21 million, there's only 21 million. And there's something like 19 million already in supply that's been issued, that's owned. 5 million are lost already from people who had wallets and just lost them. Satoshi has his share that he's never going to sell, clearly. Microstrategy has their share that they claim they're never going to sell. So you have a lot of the Bitcoin supply that's just locked in, and you only have so much that's left. So fast forward 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, you can speculate. We can all speculate, but we can also just look at the data. And then we can form our best educated guess on what it is. And I don't know what's going to happen in 2025 day to day. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I can just have my predictions. And my predictions are, I still think we're going to hit $180,000 Bitcoin. My conservative case is 150. My case of like, okay, this would be good is 180. And my bullish case is over 200. And my MicroStrategy predictions, not financial advice at all. This is just for me, how I'm looking at it. My own personal perspective is, I think we're going to hit 800. I would really be surprised if we don't hit 700. And that's a double from now. And I think we can break 1,000. And somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300. My dream would be 2,000, but that's like a dream. And that's my super, super bullish dream where I wake up and go, if everything went right, we could hit 2,000 price point in MicroStrategy. Again, do not take what I'm saying as any financial advice. This is from my personal viewpoint, okay? And do not invest based on what anyone says on their predictions. Just study it yourself and make your own predictions, okay? But that is my personal case for it, of when I'm going to start looking at profits for MicroStrategy is probably around the 700 or 800 mark. I'm already in heavy profits, so I don't have to go any further now than to, if I sold it now, I'd be in massive profits for MicroStrategy. But like, I'm not stupid. I know what's going to happen in 2025. I don't know the playbook. I don't know the exact day by day, the exact second by second. I don't know what countries and nations and banks are going to do. But in my basic knowing, I know we're in for a ride in 2025. And that's what I'm playing my game on. So you got to figure out what you're going to play your game on. If you're going to play the game, is the game just going to be education and studying and getting to know it? You got to decide. So that's exciting. So those are all the reasons to be bullish for Bitcoin. I don't know if I recap the 10 reasons. Somewhere in here I gave the 10 reasons. And I think at the end of the day, the final base case reason for being bullish is it's just smart. It's just smart. It's just logical based on the reasons that I gave. There's logic involved here. And for people who don't know Bitcoin or MicroStrategy and think we're gambling at the casino, I'm not at all. And the gambling at the casino to me is really simple. It's actually investing in traditional financial products. That's the gambling at the casino. Because if I buy bonds, I'm assured to lose my money. Okay? Because the money printing is so bad. Bonds is not going to get anybody ahead. And if I follow traditional financial products, like, I'm not going to get there. It is the responsibility now of I believe every person across the world to really get educated on the new money. And the new money is Bitcoin. And you can say below that, the subtopics below that, or the subcategories, is digital currency. But again, the most senior, the best, the finite one, the one that has no central authority controlling it, is Bitcoin. All right. And go study. I think Jack Mahler has a really good point of view on coins like XRP and things like that. And go watch one of his videos. I was watching an interview that was done with him this morning. If you own XRP, great. Good for you. Philosophically, there's kind of a competition between the two in terms of like the interest between XRP and the interest between people who own Bitcoin. Make your own opinion on it. But overall, like my intelligence, my logic, and my knowing is the bet on Bitcoin. And then, of course, something like MicroStrategy, who owns 471,000 Bitcoin, the reason I invest in MicroStrategy is because of that. So huge percentage of my portfolio is in those two. And those are my bets for 2025. I own some Tesla. I own some Solana. I just did a trade on Solana today, made 17% or 16.7% on the trade. So I own some Solana. I mess around and I trade with 3% of my portfolio. You probably heard me talk about this before. But 95, 96% of what I do, I invest, I hold it for a while, and I take some profits. So I hope this serves you. I hope that, things are working out great for you, for your family, and your life. And I just do believe it is a responsibility to share this knowledge and to share points of view that will help the American public and help the public of countries all around the world, because our economy and our current money system is not good. It's just not. Our current financial products, overall, as a general analysis, there are some that are good. So I'm not saying all. The great majority of our financial products in the United States are not good. They're not good. And they're not designed to help you get ahead. And I think the number one thing you can do, and this is a reason for being bullish for Bitcoin, the number one thing you can do is start to question the financial products that are out there. Question the banks, question, all the different types of financial products that are being presented to you. Question. And really look at the analysis. Can you get ahead today by purchasing traditional financial products? Question life insurance. I used to be in the business. Question it. I don't believe you can get ahead with those financial products today. I don't believe you can get ahead with financial products like life insurance, even though I sold it for 7 or 8 years and I own it, and I'm about to empty my last policy. Currently, right now, I'm in the process of emptying that whole thing and putting into Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. I don't believe you can get ahead with bonds. You lose with bonds. I don't believe you can get ahead with most investment managers who charge high fees. I don't believe you can. Those fees erode your money over time, and just go do the math. And I think it's smart for people to get educated and start making decisions for themselves. And if you know an investment advisor, or you're choosing an investment advisor, you better make sure they have some knowledge on Bitcoin and what's going on in the world, because if they don't, I think they're behind the times. And that's just my personal viewpoint. And I was in the space for a decade. So I watched what happened in the intricacies of companies. I watched the fund fees. I watched how the products were marketed. At the time, I bought into it, and then I got smart. And I woke up to the realization that you can't get ahead with 10% returns today. You can't. You won't. And so you just got to look at, what am I investing in? And you can go, great, well, I'd rather take 10% than be in the volatility or be in the risk of owning something like Bitcoin. And I'm not giving you financial advice of what to do, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm looking at this as an investor today myself, I'm not going to make decisions to get 10% today, because it just doesn't win. And that's been marketed by financial companies for decades, guys, decades and decades and decades. When I was 21 in the business, that was, hey, get 10% over the long term. Yeah, really? So you can print 7% more money every year and I can get a positive 3% gain. And then you tack in the credit card debt that most people have at 28%. You really getting ahead? Or the student loans that somebody has that they have to pay back? You know, it's not getting America ahead. It's not getting other nations around the world ahead. It's not working. And if it was working, why is can you really sit here and say that the public is just so irresponsible and nobody knows how to manage money and nobody's successful and nobody has good qualities and traits to where they could actually be good at money? That's not true. People are smart and people are good and people deserve better. And deserving better to me is Bitcoin, because finally there's a sound money where you can win versus the financial institutions taking the lion's share, right? And that's been happening for years. We'll spin off 10%, right? We'll give you get 10% over time on this thing in your investment portfolio. What do you think they're doing with your money, man? Why do you think the government wants your money wrapped up in 401ks and IRAs so you can't touch it? Why do you think they want that? There's companies and institutions that are leveraging the hell out of your money. The bank ain't depositing your money. You think they're not depositing your money. The bank's leveraging your money 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times over. You give them $1, they turn it over 9 different times. Go look it up. It's called Fractional Reserve Lending System. They've been doing it for a long, long time. And that's the bank that's conservative, who's going to loan you money, who wants to make sure that when they loan you money, you back it with a lot of collateral. You need to back it with a lot of collateral. Otherwise, I'm not going to loan you money. Yet, when you deposit money in the bank, do they back it with jack shit? They don't back it with anything. Come on. They back it with nothing. During COVID, the fractional reserve lending system says that banks need to hold 5 or 10% in reserves of the money that you deposit, because in case somebody was supposed to withdraw, all the money were withdrawn from the banks at once. If everybody decided to withdraw their money, what would be left? They only have to hold 10%, and they lifted some of those laws during COVID to where some banks had to hold 0%. They could loan out 100% of the money that was put in on deposits. Yet when you go get a loan, you basically gotta get a rectal exam for them to approve you. Come on, man. I was having a spirited conversation, I won't mention the bank, with one of my banks yesterday, and just was like, hey, here's my point of view. Here's my point of view. Take it or leave it. I understand you got to do what you do. I got to understand your policies. It's not right. It's not right. And the exact very thing that we're being asked to do is like, hey, you want to get a loan from a bank? Put up your house, or put up your assets, or put up this, or put up the income from your company, put up all this stuff, and then we'll give you some money to use. Yet we give them our money and they hold on to hardly any of it, man. Zero. What are they backing it up with? The good name, right? The good name of the bank, or that we're backing it up with that the Fed will bail them out. Well, in 2008, when shit hit the fan, who do you think paid for that mess? You did. You paid for it, right? When they were over leveraged to the tilt, right? Over leveraged, like the country was about to fall over. They were so over leveraged, And then the number of institutions and banks that needed to be bailed out in 2008 with this whole mortgage crisis, who paid for it? You did. You did. Right? And you didn't just pay for it where your house went into foreclosure or they took back your assets. You paid for it in tax dollars, man. So I don't know if you can sit there and sit here and say that this, like a solid, stable point of like, even if one looks and goes, I don't believe that Bitcoin is the right choice. Can you literally sit here and look at the current financial system and look at the products and say that that is the right choice? Really? At least acknowledge the part that you got a problem, man, right? Acknowledge the part that you got a problem. And thank God we have a president that's coming in to make some radical decisions of the total fuck up that's been done over the last 4 years. So let's call it that, okay? What a disaster, all right? And it's been going on for longer than 4 years, but heck, it wasn't getting any better over the last 4 years, I can tell you that much. So somebody's got to start making some radical decisions, okay, in a way that's in favor of the American public. And for the rest of the economies around the world, you know, and the rest of the countries, my heart goes out too, because, Lord, if it's happening in this country, I've seen some of the statistics in other countries. Heck, Argentina, 100% inflation. Go back and look at Argentina's inflation a couple years ago. Right? That's why you have other countries like El Salvador and Bhutan who are smart that are already adopting strategic Bitcoin reserves. Right? Like, we got to get on board, and we got to get on board fast. And the world needs to speak out. We all need to speak out, because it's no longer can we sit here and accept the problem. Right? You have good people in this world, and you have good people who want to do good things. And we should not stand for an economic system that doesn't offer up. Overall, there are some good products. I'm not saying all, but overall, the general consensus of the products being offered up to the public are not good. They're not good. And this is the first chance to sit here as a world, as a community, as a group, and be like, hey, let's finally stand for something where everybody can actually win. Bitcoin, the first economic system where everybody can actually win. Show me one before this. Show me an empire before this that hasn't declined and folded and just died as an economy in terms of their banking systems, their currencies that collapsed. Find me one, okay? And if you think the U.S. hasn't done it yet, go look at the Silicon Bank run of 2023. The banks failed right here in the U.S. in 2023. So if you don't think it's coming in the future, brace yourself, okay? And who ends up paying for these failures? We do. We do. So it's the demand of the American public through our vote, through our voice. It's the demand of people around the world that we stop standing for this bullshit that's been going on in the economic system for the last 100 years. And since 1913, when the income tax came in, because in 1776, hell, we fled from another country to have our independence. So we had no taxation without representation. And now what do you got again? You got taxation without representation, man. Since 1913. Since the IRS came in and decided. Right? So thank God. Salute Trump. I hope he puts in the External Revenue Service. I hope they do what they're saying in terms of what they're going to do with the IRS. I hope that just give the American public, give the world some leniency on stuff. Are you kidding me? I mean, look at certain states. The tax brackets here in California are up to 50%, man. Every $1 and $2 somebody makes is taxed. Really? Come on, man. What is going on? What is going on? Okay? You need everything short of a rectal exam. Today, I think you need a rectal exam, and you need a genealogy test, and you need a genetic test, and you need a DNA test just to go get a loan from a bank. That was an exaggeration. Sarcastic joke, but come on, man. So let's vote, right? I'm voting with my political vote. I'm voting with my money. I'm voting with where I put my money. I'm voting with my voice, because I'm fucking tired of it, man. And you should be too, right? Just sit here and go numb. And what's happened in the public, you might wonder why people accept it, because the world's gone numb. They're just so used to thing after thing after thing, right? 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard. That was when the dollar was officially backed by nothing. 2008, The mortgage crisis put us in a world of shit, and the tax got passed on to you. 2023, banks failed in Silicon Valley. That's just the United States. Look around the country. Every major currency in the past, look at the countries around the world and the number of failures that have happened with the countries. Germany had failures in their banking system back in the Tang Dynasty, in whatever year the Tang Dynasty was, when they were one of the first dynasties or empires or nations in the world to use the printing of money. And they failed too. The Roman Empire failed. Hell, they diluted their damn coins, man. It used to be gold. Hey, I'm going to get a gold coin or a silver coin. They started diluting it with other metals. That's called debasing the currency. It's right. Hey, you're getting a gold coin. No, you ain't. You ain't getting a gold coin. You're getting a gold coin with a bunch of shit mixed in it, right? Just like the dollar you're getting today. You ain't getting a real dollar, man. You're getting paper that's burning up at 7% every year. Every dollar you get handed, somebody hands you a dollar a day, just burns 7%. It's 93%. Because we print 7% more. So that dollar you hold it, you just burn 7%. You ain't getting a dollar when you get it. Every dollar you accept in your business today is not $1. It's 93% by the rules of money printing that's been happening for the last 100 years. And in a bad year, like the 14% or 15% of printing during COVID, every dollar you made in your business that year, it was 86 cents, man. 86 cents. Because of a 14% printing in money in 2020, 2021, 2022. Go look at the stats. It was something like 40 to 50% of an increase in the money supply over a 2.5 year period. So whatever dollars you collected over that time frame were cut in half. You had $1 million in your bank account in 2020. By the time you hit 2022, if it was sitting in cash in 2022 and a half, it was sitting at about $600,000. I don't know how you can sit here and not be tired of that, man. I don't know how you can sit here and go into the supermarket and look at the prices and be disgusted. How you can sit here and I was looking at another Lamborghini. I bought a Lamborghini back in 2020, okay? Put $60,000 down on the Lamborghini. My monthly payment was $2,300. The same Lamborghini 4 years later, a different version, is now a $4,300 payment per month. You think the car got twice as good? Shit, no, man. Come on. Hell no, it didn't. What a joke, man. It's a joke, okay? So let's do something about it, right? Speak out, right? Go tell your friends. Go spread the awareness to people. I'm like, you want to sit here and toe-to-toe and have a conversation with me about what I believe in? I know what I believe in. But don't sit on the line. Don't toe on the line. You're either on one side or you're on the other, man. You know? Because the other side ain't working. And if you can use the other side to your benefit and you can use leverage to your benefit, great, more power to you. But use it in an intelligent way to where you have an asset like Bitcoin that's going to go up in value over the years versus something like the dollar that's going to lose. And I'm not saying that the US dollar isn't good. I'm not saying that the US dollar isn't strong, but it is not a place to store your money. You don't store your wealth in the US dollar. You don't. Okay? And you're certainly not going to store it in other currencies around the world either. And you're certainly not going to store it in bonds if you're smart. And I don't think over the next 10 years, you're going to look at the S&P 500 and say that that's a smart move over the next 10 years because Bitcoin will become the equivalent of the S&P 500 over the next decade. It's just where people will put their money. It just is. Except it will do better. Where the S&P has averaged 14% over the last 30 years, Bitcoin, as it levels out, as the market cap gets bigger in Bitcoin, more and more money will pour into it. It'll eventually stabilize. It won't be such a volatile asset. I love the volatility. I love the average of 60% gains over the last so many years. Do the math yourself to figure out what it is. But certainly over time, like Saylor says, it might level out to a 30% gain per year. But that'll be better than the S&P. And I'm not saying the S&P is a bad choice, but hell, man, if I got a 7% printing of the money supply every year and I'm making 14% in the S&P, I'm really making 7%. If I have any kind of credit card debt on top of that, then that 7% net that I'm making, it's not 7%. It's more like 3%, 4%. Can one live with their wealth going up by 3% a year? And then if I'm going to buy goods and things that I want that are at an even higher premium, like really good steaks that I want, and the value of a steak has gone through the roof. Heck, you used to go to a restaurant and have a steak. Now you're walking out, steaks are double the price. Like, come on, what's happening? The nice restaurants that I go here in Los Angeles, a really nice restaurant. You used to walk out with a bill of maybe $250. Now walk out with a bill of $500. Like what am I? Am I snorting cocaine at the table right now? Did you put cocaine in my meal and I didn't know about it? Did you put actual real gold in my avocado that I didn't know about it? Like, really, dude? Okay. So I'm not happy with the scenario, and I'm doing something about it, and I'm making different decisions. And I got to tell you, I'm done with financial advisors. I will never use one again. Okay. In terms of the banking system, I have to keep my money somewhere. Okay. And there is a time and a place and use for banks. And I'm not saying that there is, but the way that the American public is treated, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. And the credit card debt, Trump should pass a law that the maximum credit card interest that somebody should pay should be way less. It's criminal to charge people 28% interest on a loan. It's just criminal, dude. It just is. All right. I'm off my sandbox. That's how I feel. Hope it serves you. But it's not even subtle. It is outrageous, right? But it's like, what can you do about it? Well, the reality is we can do something about it. We can speak up. We can get educated on it. We can make choices of where we put our money, and we can demand change, and we can demand leaders that will actually put the change into place. And we have the power as a public to do that. All right. People are smart. People are good. People deserve better. Hope this serves you. See you on the flip side. Have a great rest of the day. I give you my reasons of why I'm bullish. To answer David's question that I'm from Mexico and hear the people say MicroStrategy is a pyramid. This is true. MicroStrategy is not a pyramid at all. I'm glad you asked the question. It is nowhere near a pyramid at all, in the slightest bit at all, period, at all, period, at all, period, at all. It's not. Okay. And I love that somebody asked the question. So I respect the fact that you're asking the question, right? So it just isn't. And, I watched this with a newscaster who was talking about, like, is MicroStrategy a Ponzi scheme? And they asked the question, and I understand that somebody would want to ask it, and somebody would want to know, and somebody would want to be protective of the fact that, like, nobody wants to get involved in a Ponzi scheme. I don't blame you, right? And it's a good question to ask, to be like, hey, I want to protect myself. But one who studies it and one who looks at it knows that it is absolutely 100% not a pyramid scheme. It is not a Ponzi scheme. And if you look at the basic principles of them acquiring, and the company that's acquiring the most Bitcoin on the planet out of any company on the face of the planet, which is the most sound money on the planet, or sound digital currency on the planet, or sound commodity, because it really is a commodity on the planet. If you look at Bitcoin, they own the most. So if you believe in Bitcoin and you watch what MicroStrategy is doing, which, by the way, is regulated in the things that they're doing, not to say that our regulation in the United States is the greatest regulation ever on the face of the planet, because we've seen what's happened with many industries. So you do have to be cautious. You do have to be careful. But at the end of the day, MicroStrategy is not a pyramid scheme. All right. So go do the research, get educated on it. If you came in late to the video, go watch what I shared earlier in the video, because you will understand fundamentally, basically, and simplistically, in concept, what they are actually doing. And I explained that early in the video so one can get the concept, because the principles are fundamental of what they're doing. Okay. They are borrowing money. Companies do this all the time. They are issuing shares. Companies do this all the time. They are buying Bitcoin. Companies don't do this all the time. So anytime somebody sees something new, they question it, which they should. They should question. They should do their research. They should get the data. They should figure it out. And as I was saying, companies aren't doing this all the time, but they're starting to do this more and more, because since MicroStrategy did it, 150 plus companies are doing the same thing. So he is brilliant. It doesn't mean the stock is not volatile. You need to do heavy research before you would ever. I would do heavy research, and I did heavy research before I ever bought MicroStrategy, and also before I ever bought Bitcoin. So you need to do your research. You need to be prudent, get educated. This is purely a channel about education. This is purely a channel about just giving you my point of view on things. And what I say is definitely not the gospel, even though I was preaching it like crazy just now in the last 10 minutes. It's just my point of view. And I want to share and I want to help. That's why I have this channel. Okay. And I am putting my money where my mouth is, because that's where my portfolio is invested, in Bitcoin and MicroStrategy and Tesla and some Solana. But the majority of my position is Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. The minority is Tesla and Solana. And when I say majority of my positions in terms of my investments, 90% plus is MicroStrategy Bitcoin. Okay? Hope it serves you. See you on the flip side. Vote with your voice and speak to the world. Speak to your friends. Pass on the good news. Get people to see a different point of view. The more we all pitch in with this, the more, one, it just opens up the world to seeing what real sound money is for the first time ever. It ain't the dollar. It ain't the euro. It ain't the peso. It's not gold. I'm not saying gold doesn't have sound features, but it is not the most sound financial instrument on the planet. It's not bonds. There are good stocks out there, and there's great stocks out there. So I'm not saying don't invest in stocks in other companies. But when it comes to Bitcoin, to me, it's the most sound and most prudent thing that I've done with my money. Hope it serves you. See you on the flip side.